welcome. This is our third Level Up webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to really just bring in partners that have really good ideas about usually typically around data management, but around tech in the nonprofit world to just talk about a topic and hopefully drive up some conversations. So this month, we are more than happy to welcome in Chandler from NPact, and I will turn it over to him for an introduction.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, it's great to be with everybody this afternoon. Excited for the conversation. As Kevin mentioned, my name is Chandler Cox. I lead our partnerships organization, also our sales organization here at NPact. I've been here for about 3 years on the NPact team, but we were joking about Charleston before we started. I spent about close to a decade at Blackbaud prior to coming over to the NPact team. So again, excited to be with everybody today and chat a little bit about data management.
Thank you. And my name is Kevin Wood. I am the business development manager here at NPact. I spent 15 years in the nonprofit world in data management, bouncing around to a few different verticals. I joined NPact about 2.5 years ago. So I've been a full-time, mostly Razor's Edge consultant, but now I also kind of help our outbound sales and take on a lot of our discovery calls and do kind of these things like this, which I really enjoy. And I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. So we are talking about the whys and hows of data management today. This is a very broad topic. We'll kind of drill down a little bit as to that, but really what we want to kind of get across is the importance of a data management strategy. And here's our agenda for today, just a handful of topics that we're going to touch on. But first, I think we're going to start, yes, with some poll questions like we always do. The first one, we are going to open up the polls we would love for you guys to answer is, what role do you primarily play in your organization? And I know we all wear a bunch of different hats, so pick the one that you kind of do the most, I guess, or the one you're most proud of.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kevin, there's probably a lot of fundraisers who are also data gurus, right?
Who also plan the events and who also lead. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
Sarah, good call. All the above.
Yeah. That's what we should have put. That should have been an option. It was all the above. All right. So that's just about everyone. And we have just about half of us in here are data gurus. You guys are my people. Virtual high five to you all. Got a couple fundraisers, couple event planners, and a couple leadership and a few others. So the next question is, do you have a data strategy?
The good news is either way, hopefully we'll be able to share some thought-provoking kind of ideas and allow you to kind of leave this webinar thinking about some ways that maybe you can enhance the way you use data at your organization or institution.
Yeah. So we've got more people that don't have a data strategy versus about 9 of us that do. So yeah, like we will, I think Chandler just said, we'll throughout this time today, we'll kind of relay the importance of a data management strategy for your organization. So Chandler, why data management?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Kevin. I mean, the nice thing about having so many folks with so many different roles and responsibilities, and maybe a shared roles and responsibility across a couple different areas. I mean, I think the first thing that we want to talk about is, we all play a role, no matter what that role is within the organization, to take responsibility for our data and be good stewards of our data. The first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about, areas to discuss today, whenever we're talking about data management, I think the first thing that would be helpful to do is define what we're talking about whenever we talk about data management. And actually, I pulled this from IBM. And I think we can talk a little bit about how this translates into the nonprofit, quote unquote, nonprofit area of our work. But IBM defines data management as the practice of ingesting, processing, securing, and storing an organization's data, where it's then utilized for strategic decision making to improve business outcomes, right? And if we think about the importance of this from the nonprofit or fundraising lens, right? A lot of this ties into the way that we acknowledge and steward relationships with our donors, right? If we think about this, it's crucial to have clean, accurate data to be able to do that, but also all of the work that our friends in communications and marketing do to tailor interaction with our supporters, be able to personalize how we engage with folks, just to make all of that interaction even more impactful. And especially around, of course, fundraising appeals. Being able to use all of the relevant data that we're capturing across our organization to make that outreach more purposeful. For fundraisers, right? I know we had a handful of fundraisers on the line. We oftentimes hear the stories on our side of the house here at NPact of some of the challenges, but extremely important to be able to leverage and have access to all of the relevant data from a fundraiser standpoint before we walk into a meeting, right, with a prospective major gift prospect, or if we see someone at an event. But then also, of course, leadership and data analysis as well. Being able to have a strategy around how we manage our data can enable us to more accurately report out or run business intelligence or analyze the data that we use internally, and also drive strategy around how we want to proceed forward, how we set goals as an organization. Of course, it all relies on data.
Yeah, and
The
the
one
one
thing
thing
that makes,
I'd like to,
sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
yeah, I'll add to that is, we often talk about our CRM as the system of record. What's a system of record, not systems of records. So, one of the things you'll see, and I think what Omatic is great at is bringing together multiple different sources of data into one system of record. One of the things I think is paralyzing for organizations is spreadsheets that live on desktops and pieces of paper that live on desks that hold really, really crucial, important information. And if they're on those spreadsheets or they're on those pieces of paper, it doesn't exist because it's not in the system of records. I think it's really, really important to make sure we're putting all the information in the right place.
100%. Well, and to your point, Kevin, and we can advance to the next slide. This challenge seems to be getting harder as time goes on. And I'd encourage everyone on the line to reflect on your own organization to see if maybe this rings true. But if we look at just the sheer technology landscape of applications and software solutions that are just available to nonprofit organizations, if you look back from 2010 to today, the sheer number of options for organizations has tripled. It's increased 3x. And Kevin and I were chatting. We've been on the conference circuit for the past couple months. There's been a lot of conferences, industry conferences that have happened. And even myself, being in this industry for close to the last 15 years, you walk in the vendor exhibits or the vendor halls, right? There's new software solutions popping up consistently. And with these options, what we're seeing is that organizations or institutions are adopting this technology. And a couple stats here from the Omatic client base. We partner with a little over 3,000 nonprofits today. Over 60% of organizations have 5 or more third-party systems outside of, to Kevin's point, the primary system of record, whatever that might be, whether it's Blackbaud or, maybe Razor's Edge, or maybe it's Salesforce or something else. So when we think about how this relates to data management, right, we really need to have a strategy and a plan and define processes in place for how we connect these third-party systems, oftentimes 5 or more, and the data that's collected in these systems back within our primary CRM or system of record that's being used within our organization.
Yeah, I always, and I'm just going back to look at where everyone checked in from to see how many schools we had on the line. I always an example I use with clients when I have that are schools is that what happens when someone calls in to update their information? Does it matter if they call the front office or if they call advancement or if they call IT? What happens with that information? And that's really, I think, crucial. And it doesn't just pertain to schools, but that's the example I have. A data management strategy should address that. The what happens with the new information when we get it shouldn't matter depending on what office they call. I think it's really, really important.
Totally. And we'll talk about some kind of practical steps that folks can take too, Kevin, that I think will be really good in that area here shortly. Before we do that though, right? Why does this matter? And we touched on this a little bit already. But from an integration lens, which is kind of the lens that we oftentimes take at Omatic, because we're helping to solve these types of integration challenges. It's exactly what Kevin alluded to, right? Lack of proper integration and a strategy around how we manage data creates challenges, right? It can be maybe it's siloed data, right? Maybe we don't have any visibility into data across systems, so it creates blind spots, right? I'll go back to the marketing example. Is our email marketing or digital engagement solution is that siloed from our CRM system that we're using, right? How are we getting and leveraging all of the actionable relevant data that we have within that CRM system to power and segment our campaigns that we're running from a digital channel? How are we capturing all of the relevant, email activity, maybe the bounces, the opens, the clicks, or the unsubscribes or subscribes back within that CRM system? And of course, just one example. And then oftentimes for a lot of the data gurus that self-selected themselves earlier in the poll, it oftentimes can fall on your plate, right? Maybe we're having to do manual updates between systems. Maybe we're doing double entry. Maybe we're shuffling spreadsheets right across departments that certainly can be time consuming, but it also is error prone, right? And if we think about what that leads to, it leads to some downstream challenges, right? Not just for us as individuals, but across the organization, right? If we have blind spots in our data, or maybe we don't have everything centralized within one place, what we find is oftentimes it can create a lack of trust in the data that we have or don't have within our CRM systems. And oftentimes maybe it's easy to blame that CRM system for that, but oftentimes it tracks back to us not having defined processes and a strategy in place of how to get centralized data. Of course, I've used this example a couple times, but it makes it really tough to personalize communications, right? Hey, we want to kick off a welcome series for every new donor that comes in through our doors, right? It makes it really tough if we don't have effective way to exchange data between applications. Of course, less informed decision-making by leadership, right? We're only getting part of the picture rather than the full picture of what's happening. And then oftentimes, of course, as I mentioned, could be, wasted time, frustrated staff that's having to manage these manual processes. And we zoom all the way out and think big picture, it can really affect our mission and what we're trying to deliver as a team, right? If we're not providing that tailored supporter experience, right? Maybe we're having to send generic direct mail pieces or generic email outreach, then our campaigns aren't as effective, right? If our fundraisers don't have all the data they need at their fingertips, we're not able to fundraise as effective as we should, which is ultimately, hurting our bottom line when it comes to revenue and retention. There was an interesting stat that I saw, was actually from MailChimp. oddly enough. That's not, I know a lot of folks use MailChimp, but it's certainly not a nonprofit specific application. I know it's also used in the for-profit world as well. But they came out with some data that first-time donors are 4 times as likely to be retained if they are provided with personalized acknowledgement within 48 hours of that first gift, right? So accuracy is really important, but also time as well. I'm surely certain that all of us maybe have had less than ideal um, interactions, maybe with organizations that we support, and so in our personal lives. And so it's accuracy that's key, but also timeliness that's key, and ultimately it relies on data. And then, of course, missed opportunities, right? If we're not capturing all of the data and centralizing that, right? Are we able to engage post that volunteer event that we have? Or that auction or gala that's run, right? Or does it take 2 weeks to get data into a particular system before we can act on that data? And then lastly, I know something that I'm hearing more and more often is more in the nonprofit world probably than higher education, but falling behind competition, right? Organizations that are providing that superior supporter experience are the ones that are, retaining and attracting donors. I don't know
Yeah, I
anything
think
else to add here, Kevin.
yeah, I think one thing is for sure. If you can't get your gifts into your CRM in less than 48 hours, you're not going to be able to thank anyone within 48 hours. Um, but I think when we're looking at this, when we're lacking integration or just taking a long time to move information around, it really could either negatively affect stewardship for sure, but getting that information in right away can do nothing but positively affect stewardship. If one of your big donors calls into the office a day after the event, your person needs to be able to look at their record and say what did they do to support our event yesterday. If that information isn't in there, we aren't having an informed conversation with that donor, and all it takes is one big slip up to cut off ties with that big donor. And I think that it's the stewardship piece really can kind of help all of us across all of our roles, not just the fundraisers.
So, what are some practical steps that folks can take if they want to, one, evaluate maybe the current processes, but also, come prepared to look for solutions if needed? I think the first thing that I always encourage folks to do is we want to be working from business goals, right? So what is the business outcome and goal that we're trying to drive towards, right? Is it increased fundraising? Is it increased alumni participation? What is that business? Maybe it's we want to engage with new donors within 48 hours, right? Whatever that business goal is that we're looking to drive towards, let's start there. From there, let's evaluate our current data sources, right, that are capturing and storing data. So I mentioned earlier that oftentimes, I think it was 62% of organizations have 4 or more applications outside of our CRM systems that we use, whether that's Blackbaud or Salesforce. We need to take an audit of those, right? We need to know what applications we're using internally, those data sources we're collecting any type of supporter data, right? Let's document those data sources and the solutions. Next, let's map out the current processes, right? Let's take the time to understand how we're currently integrating or moving data from these applications into our CRM systems. Maybe we aren't, right? Which is fine. But it's still something that we want to know as we look to improving these types of processes internally. So mapping out our current processes. Next is outlining our data integration requirements, right? So again, tying back to our business goals that we started with, what are the integration requirements that I need to achieve to help me reach those business goals? What type of data do I need to be leveraging between applications? Um, what's the speed and timeliness of how actionable that I need to make this data between applications, et cetera, those types of things. And then lastly, I think it's investing in a solution to solve any type of processes that could be streamlined, but most importantly, defining those processes. Um, just mainly right for ourselves, but also for the future of the organizations that we all support and work for. So to recap, right, really quick, and it's really, I think, just a fundamental exercise that I think can benefit a lot of folks. Business goals, right? We always want to be driving towards those. Hey, let's take an audit and evaluate our current data sources and solutions that we use internally that store supporter data. Let's map out the current integration processes, right? Maybe there's some things that are totally streamlined and working well. Perfect. Let's not touch it. And focus on the areas where we can improve. And then outline our data integration requirements, right? What do we need to help us drive towards those business goals that we've outlined? And then, right now that we've done our legwork and we can come prepared knowing what we need to solve, let's invest in solutions, whatever those might be, and define new streamlined processes moving forward.
Yeah, and I think where I've seen organizations that have a good strategy in place is that they're constantly evaluating the process. This is not should not be written in stone. Um, your organization's tech needs, your tech stack, maybe how you communicate with your people, it changes all the time. This needs to be evaluated yearly, probably, if not more often, to make sure that this is the right direction and make sure that it works for everyone. Get buy-in from the whole team to make sure that the strategy you guys have adopted makes sense and works for your organization.
Yeah, that makes me think, Kevin, a couple of other things real quick. Um, you're spot on because I can tell you, and I'd be curious to hear anybody on the line. What we oftentimes hear is, maybe a department or a team member purchases a solution, right? Um, and then we figure out, right, how in the world are we going to get this data back into Razor's Edge or Salesforce or whatever it is, right? Really, we should be planning ahead and being strategic around that so that we can leverage data from the get-go, right? We don't want this to land in someone's lap in terms of figuring it out in terms of how to connect applications internally. So totally agree. It's not just a one-time exercise. It also should be evaluated for any new technology that you may adopt moving forward. And again, when we think about, selling this internally to get to really get, especially leadership on board with the importance of data management and being strategic around this, at the end of the day, it's impacting the way that we provide or how we communicate with our supporters and the supporter experience that we're delivering as an organization. So, whenever we think about the impact, nothing more impactful than that. On the flip side, right, we talked about some of the challenges, right, some of the benefits. Right, first, data accuracy is incredibly important anytime we're moving data. There's a lot of nuances, as I'm sure a lot of folks can share, to keep in mind whenever we're moving data. We want to prevent duplicate records, right? We want to be able to match to existing records with confidence. Maybe we want to clean up data in transit. Maybe we want to automate certain workflows. I might want to get my eyes on data before it's committed to the system in other scenarios, right? So data accuracy is really, really important because oftentimes whenever we're integrating any data, when it lands, we need to be able to take action on it. And maybe not just us, but stakeholders that we support internally as well. Increased efficiency, right? I talked about some of the manualness of these processes that we oftentimes see for organizations that are looking to improve. We want to eliminate those manual data updates. We want to eliminate the stakeholders that we support internally from having to check two, three, four different places for the information that they need. And then lastly, better insights, right? So we've talked about engagement and stewardship, but it also allows us to get really strategic as well around strategic gift asks, right? And those types of things all hinge on data. And then lastly, marrying up, right? All of the ways that our supporters interact with us back within our CRM systems.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is getting a lot of popularity is using AI to kind of drive our a custom solicitation strategy. Again, that cannot happen if that information is not in your database or in your CRM. Yeah, I want to call back to that second one, eliminate manual data updates. The database managers on the call can I've this has happened so many times in my career where we get a spreadsheet of information with hundreds of rows maybe from someone above us to say make sure this information gets updated in the database. And I mean, it just there's nothing that turns us off more than having to sit with the spreadsheet open on one screen, the CRM open on the other screen, and just manually updating information. This is the worst part of the job. Okay.
The last thing I'll mention before I turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit more about ongoing data management, because it certainly doesn't start and end with integration. Um, there's certainly many ways, right, that you could help to establish a strategy around how you manage data. Um, from the Omatic side, the way that we help is through our integration hub or integration solution called Omatic Cloud. And these are just some examples here on the screen. And really, this rings true for no matter what kind of strategy you may take within your organization. But for us, right, we have integrations and different ways to integrate data for different workflows that we may have within our organization. For example, email, I've used a couple times today. Direct integrations to MailChimp, Constant Contact, Dema, and others, events and peer-to-peer and online donations with a few examples there on the screen. Or, as Kevin has mentioned as well, spreadsheets, right? That we may need to streamline into our systems of record. For our clients is being able to manage that data in one place, but also handle a lot of the record matching and the data cleanup and some of those types of things as part of the integration process so that when the data lands, it's actionable. And actually I saw this, it reminds me, one thing we haven't talked about much today, but, oftentimes it doesn't, the story doesn't end, right? When the data gets into our CRM systems, whether that's Blackbaud, Salesforce, or something else. Oftentimes, right, we have to integrate and post all of the revenue data into our general ledgers or finance systems, whether that's Financial Edge or Sage or QuickBooks or Workday. So it's really having an end-to-end strategy for these third-party applications that we're using to how can we streamline workflows in the Blackbaud or Salesforce, but also extract all of that revenue data and post into whatever finance system or accounting system that may be used within our organization. But as I mentioned, certainly data integration is fundamental to having a data management strategy, but it doesn't just end there for sure. Kevin, I know a lot of your work at NPact is helping folks with kind of ongoing data hygiene and maintenance. Any thoughts here?
Yeah. We have so many clients that come to us to say, I have inherited this mess of a database. We need help. I don't know where to start. And so that is really where we can come in and get our clients' databases to a point where then we can pass it over to Omatic to set up the integration. But so what kind of what is the mindset that when we're working with clients, how do we do that? And I kind of have them categorized into these four different buckets here. Assess, clean, document, and train. And so the first part of that is when someone says, I don't know where to start, that's where we can come in. Our CRM consultants have, and I really do need to sit down and figure out what the number is. Last month I said like 200 years of experience working with CRMs. It's something like this. It's a ton of experience. Um, but working in the industry, in the nonprofit world, working at organizations, but then also working on the technical side as well. A ton of our folks have worked at Blackbot at one point in their career. So we are really able to come to you with this really good skill set to say, let us look at your data and provide some shine a light on it or provide some guidance on where do we need to go, because in fact a lot of times it is overwhelming and we get to a point where we're just like, I don't know what to do anymore. So that's where we can come in and kind of help. So do the assessment first, and then clean the data. We're not going to, as great as the technology that NPact provides, they're not going to be able to integrate data, messy data. So we can come in, help clean it up first. And we don't have to go back to the beginning of time in your CRM to clean up. We come to an agreed upon starting point. And from that point moving forward, we really scrub, clean, put the data back in. So it's in a uniform manner. But doing all that work is great, but it's not going to do any benefit if we don't look at the process as well. So developing a policy and procedure manual sometimes, or changing or editing the one or fine tuning the one you have, is part of that process. The next step is training our staff. We can have really clean data, we can have really good processes, but if our staff doesn't know what to do with the information once it gets in, then we're going to start having messy data again. So we assess, we clean, we train, and then the last part is perform routine maintenance. NPact is a fully remote company, so I work from home. This weekend, I finally said I am going to clean my office. It was it was way past due. It was messy. It took me hours to do, and I told myself if I just spent 5 minutes every day tidying up a little bit, it would never get to that point again. It's the same kind of idea that we need to have about our data inside our CRM, is that we need to check weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly on these certain things to make sure that the data is right, clean, and able to be integrated into our other systems. And these are the kind of the offerings that we have. I talked about all these, but database assessment, this is an actual thing that we sell, like a fixed rate service that we sell. We also do a lot of virtual training, but we also do on-site engagements as well. Really good opportunity for your staff to learn a lot in a short period of time, from one of our expert consultants on the CRM and on the accounting side as well. And then we can sell our hours in retainer options, and then also buckets of hours as well. So if you have any interest for any of our services in NPact, any of Chandler's services at NPact, our contact information is on the screen. We also have about 9 minutes left. I would love to open up the chat if there's any questions about anything that we talked about today, any of the services that NPact provides or NPact provides, or anything about data management in general. Please drop those in the chat. We would love to hear those questions.
I think you brought up while we're waiting on questions, Kevin, I think you brought up a good point. Especially around data hygiene and maintenance, right? It's not a one-time activity. Oftentimes the data challenges, can be tracked upstream to, some type of maybe it was an individual that didn't know our processes and procedures and didn't do something correctly, a staff member. Maybe it was an integration, right, that isn't effective, that's causing some type of challenge. So, definitely not a one-time activity. Definitely want to be something that you manage on an ongoing basis for sure.
Yeah, and one of the other things I'll mention, something that happens when we're doing our on-site engagements, something that happens that just when everyone in the organization that has a hand in the CRM is together in the same room at the same time, some really good conversation comes up about why we do what we do or how we track information the way we do. And it's interesting, organizations and teams don't really get that opportunity to have that kind of dialogue on a normal basis. So even if you don't have someone that comes in and does on-site training, get the whole team together to talk about this strategy. This isn't going to be solved over a group email. This needs to be an intentional time for us to come together and say, why are we tracking their information the way we do? What are our goals? What do we want to do with this information? So a lot of that will go back into that process that needs to be discussed in person together.
Totally.
Cool. Chandler, do you have anything else? I appreciate the time. This was fun, putting this presentation together. Do you have any final words?
No, no, I echo it. I appreciate you for having us, Kevin. Hope to come back soon, and thanks for everybody for joining us for a short session this afternoon. I think if you leave with nothing else, it's yeah, and we probably could jump back a few slides, and I know we'll share the deck. But some of those kind of practical steps that we outlined together, in terms of things that you can do today, to start to understand, the current data sources and systems that you're using, how we're moving data today, mapping out those current processes, understanding where the gaps are and where our requirements should be, and then looking to find solutions, a way to make things better. I think if nothing else, hopefully you can take away that. And I echo Kevin's sentiments. And sorry, Kevin, I've got you jumping around everywhere. But if you jump back
That's
to
right.
that last slide,
Which
I'd
one?
encourage I'd encourage you, or with our emails, our contact
Oh, okay.
info.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to hear from you. If you're looking for your plans, looking into your plans for 24, or for even for next year for 25, and you're looking to get a handle on your data, or looking to maybe integrate applications or systems, always happy to brainstorm and make suggestions and talk through things. And I don't want to speak for Kevin, but I know he'd always be open to talking data strategy and data management.
Yeah, absolutely. And this level up series is a good opportunity to do that. So if you have any suggestions or things you'd love for us to talk about, partners you want to hear from, please let me know. This happens the fourth Wednesday of every month, at either 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock Eastern time. And next month we will be having our friends from Virtuous on, to talk
Very cool.
more about CRMs, which is really fun. So um, I appreciate everyone's time. We look for the recording sent out tomorrow, and let us know how we can help. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Take care.